Now, I wanted to ask you, John, and I'll ask you all about this because it came up with David Gingell about Tom Waterhouse. Now, he's an example of somebody who clearly is on the cusp of a pretty successful business. There's an awful lot of cash that's coming his way. Honestly, to a generation of people, he's probably now as top of mind as Coke is or Pepsi is in the betting space. So many different ticks. But then there is just this factor, this feel that can be around. Do you think that Tom Waterhouse did it wrong? Did he buy too much of it? Or is it tall poppy associated with mum and dad? I mean, John, why do, for want of a better term, why do people love you and haven't quite loved him yet?
Well, I think with Tom, it's been perceived that he's invaded, the space of families, enjoyment, watching footy, and all of a sudden you keep getting ads about betting odds, and you can bet on anything, which side the ball's going to land and whatever. And I think, people don't like that. And it was invasion. I guess I was fortunate where what we tried to do is, what Lorna Jane said, give people what they want. So we came out and they were screaming for competitive rates and screaming for be treated with dignity and some service, whereas Tom invaded their free space where they were relaxing. They didn't want that. So, I think he broke the cardinal rule, and it's like what the banks were doing. They'd come up and manufacture a product to suit them at a price to suit them and ram down the consumers' throats. And we tried to do the opposite. And I think Tom, he and his advisors could have done a bit more homework, because that's a pretty sensitive space. Was this what consumers wanted? And there's kids and teenagers, and you don't want them to sort of grow up to be, habitual punters. And I think broke a few rules.
Can you fix it? If your first introduction is not quite perfect, can you put it back in the horse?
Well, yes, you just got to pick your market. You've got to understand your product and where there's a market need. And I don't think the footy shows has a need for a bookmaker, as nice a guy as I think Tom is. I just think he's picked the wrong market.
Yeah. Lorna Jane, also, something that's important to note about Tom Waterhouse, and I've been one of his critics along with everyone else as a fan, is that he's not the only bookmaker who advertises. I would think that with the same proliferation and noise, there has been companies that have been marketing and they've been trying to do wacky ads similar to beer ads, but as soon as it became a personality, it became an issue overnight. It became a lightning rod as a person. Again, specifically, are there things that you think he did well or poorly? How do you think the Tom Waterhouse thing serves as an example about being the face of a brand?
I mean, I'm not an expert. I haven't studied marketing or anything like that. I just have a successful business. And I think for me, how I personally felt about it was that it was about money. I felt like he was trying to get my money, or people who were watching, he was trying to get my money. And I think when you have a face, it's easy to blame somebody. When you package it in a marketing campaign, sometimes it can be more fun, and then people don't maybe realise that people are asking them to bet. I think what we all did right is we, as John said, we weren't chasing money. We felt that we wanted to deliver to people something that we were experiencing and we loved, and we wanted to share it with other people. And I think those stories people are more receptive to, and they start to love you, and you become part of their family.
Well, we'll get to some questions in a second or two, but Ruslan?
Your money back if the other team scores a point first. And he's not after money, he just wants people to become more involved in the sport.
You think?
But do people believe that?
Well, that's up to them as a marketer. Look, I'm friends with Tom, and I think the whole issue is absolutely ridiculous. It's just another example of a government wanting to make more decisions on our behalf, what we put in our mouths, what we watch with our eyes, what we listen to with our ears. John said it went too far and it wasn't making the viewing enjoyable. That's up to the commercial networks to decide. What's going to happen if the viewing's not enjoyable? They're going to stop that action. It's their job to win customers. So the natural market...
Money. They are desperate for
If
money.
people aren't watching, they're not going to make money.
But they're not there. But in the space of football, though,
If people are
you're there
offended
for the
by
product that is football, and you can't tape it. You watch
Okay,
it
what
live.
about the news when they announce the stock prices? Essentially, if you break it down to what it is, stock prices is gambling. Saying, what do you think is going to happen to that company? Is it bad for our kids to have a look at stock prices? Should we stop showing the news and stock
no,
prices?
that's
That's part of
no,
our
I'm saying,
super. That's part of our super stock price.
Yeah, I think it's a different thing. But also, I think the interesting thing that does need to be said about the government response, just on a tangent, is I found it quite hilarious that you had the government announcing that they were going to crack down on live odds when live odds actually aren't shown. They cracked down on something that did happen last year but was self-regulated away. So the government made all this noise, and Tom Waterhouse was the face of something that didn't actually exist, was their response to it. But anyway. Janine, I'm also interested to know here too about when you are the face of the company and then eventually you start being able to be, your profile rises, does that become a strength when you walk in and start negotiating with your, with either your franchisees obviously, or you're trying to do it with your, with the people who provide you the product? When you have profile and you walk into the room, does it help?
Look, I think it does, because immediately you don't have to sort of go, okay, this is who I am, and so you're sort of already at that level instead of, you know, and also I think that when I was a publicist at UIP, I used to meet all these movie stars, and I just assumed they were certain people. You know, Jean-Luc Picard wasn't the captain of the Star Trek Enterprise. You know, I thought he was, but he wasn't. And so you sort of do have this. So people do have an impression through the media and that of you. So it does give. I don't know if it gives you an advantage, but it does give you a level of respect. And I think that certainly when we go international and you go to countries which aren't sort of as accepting as women as, say, Australia is, then it does give you an extra leg up, because suddenly you're not a woman, you're this businesswoman.
Yeah, I've got to ask that question as the follow-up. As somebody who is a high-profile, successful business person, how do you feel about all the misogyny chat of the past couple of years, the role of women in public life and business? I know it's not strictly the purpose here, but I'm interested to know.
Oh, look, I think that for me it doesn't really have any sort of impact at all. I'm a firm believer that when people go, tell me the challenges of women in business, I said, well, really, we have the same challenges as men.
Yeah.
There is no difference. You know, let's have Women's Day. Well, why are we having Women's Day? You know, so I don't really see this as, I think that if women say, we have glass ceilings, well, you've created them. Like, I don't really think that there is a female thing. I think that we have control in a country like Australia to do whatever we want.
Yeah, I agree. Now, John, that idea of having the profile, when you do go off and negotiate, does it help or hurt?
Probably helps a bit. I mean, when you're weak, and you're treated that way. When we started, you know, we get squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, and it's like any business. You know, Janine, you take your business, the bigger you get, the better the buying power, you know, but when you start, you just get crucified at the cross. You just hope to God that you can survive, and that's the way of any small business. And you know, I guess a profile does help, but at the end of the day, you know, your business has got to be a business that makes sense for partners to. I'm a big believer in, you know, growing businesses, particularly small businesses, to get to bigger businesses, to partner. And because you don't have the money and the resources and everything else, and you look for partners who've got, you know, resources, skills and stuff you don't have. But it does help, I guess, you know, the more successful you become, and success, whether that's your brand, whether it's your business, it's a whole package. It's not just one thing.
Ruslan, do you think that it helps in negotiation, that people, obviously the business knows who you are, but that the stranger in the room will have an idea of who you are?
Yeah, look, it certainly helps. Like, there's obviously responsibilities with being the face of a brand, and I'd be at a tech show in Hong Kong and someone comes up to me saying their phone doesn't work, and they bought it from Kogan. So I'd sit down with them, open it up, fix it for them, change the settings, close it up, and then they go and write on our Facebook page, the CEO just fixed my phone. But I take on that responsibility, and I'm passionate about tech, and I love helping people with it. The benefits, on the other hand, is when a meeting starts off with a potential vendor you want to deal with, and they come into the meeting and they're like, "Oh, can I have a photo with you?" That's off to a pretty good start.
Yeah.
And you know, it means
I think you officially have the upper hand.
yeah. So you know, then after that, they know the size of the business, they know the volume, they want to do business with you, and you know, they'll push the boundaries in terms of what they've done in previous deals in order to win your business. So it's got a it's got a massive effect on that.
Same question, and then I'll open it up to the floor. So if there are some questions about the advantages and otherwise, get to that in a second. But Lorna Jane, is that something that helps when you're negotiating? You got profile?
It's not really part of my role at Lorna Jane to negotiate, but I guess I was thinking while the other guys were speaking, because we're a retail business, actually getting into great locations in retail shopping centres is easy in Australia because they know the brand and they know how well we do and we have history. We just expanded into the US and it was really difficult to start with until we got the first stores open and they saw how wonderful they were and how people love them. It was really difficult, but going into the US and being somebody that people don't know about is actually what I love to do. I love talking about my brand. I love explaining why I do this, and I love to see the look in someone's eyes when they think, wow, that's amazing, that's really different. So I take on that challenge. I'd rather be anonymous for a little bit.